let's begin. All right, number one, what is the understanding of salvation in the Orthodox Church? Obviously, salvation is something that is so important for any Christian of any faith and of any denomination. Likewise, it is also very important to us. For us, we don't understand salvation as a specific moment in time, much like many of the Protestant brothers and sisters that I've seen and spoken with, in which they would say, I am saved. They know the specific date at the specific time in which they were able to confess that Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior, and therefore they were saved at that very moment. Salvation for us is much more like a marriage, if we can use that imagery, because Christ himself uses it as well as St. Paul. Salvation is like a marriage in which, yes, by virtue of our baptism, we come to be united to Christ, but what our marriage is like, whether it is good or bad, largely depends on the way that we come to know the person that we're married to, by the things that by the way in which we draw closer to our spouse, through the acts of love and care and adoration that we do throughout the day, weeks, months, years of our marriage. Likewise, we can also have a marriage that, although we may be united in marriage, we may have a marriage that is kind of hellish, in where we come not to know our spouse at all. We may arrive at the end of our lives not having known them in any respect. Therefore, it is similar to what the words of Christ when he says, "Depart from me, I never knew you." So for us, salvation is kind of like this process in which we come to know God and in which God comes to know us, in which the hope is that at the end of our life, or whenever that is, God comes to see himself reflected in us. And likewise, we come to see Christ reflected in us. When we see Christ, we kind of see ourselves in that sense, which is why when St. Paul, we know in some respect the salvation of St. Paul, because he says, "It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me." Our life becomes his life. His life becomes our life. And therefore, this is kind of the process of sanctification. Now, in order for this to happen, in order for Christ to be ours, it requires what we in the Orthodox Church kind of call like a therapeutic regimen, which we really think of the Orthodox Church as a hospital in where people who are sick with sin, through different pathologies of sin and the passions, they come into the hospital of the church in order to be saved. How are they saved? Through the healing of their mind, of their heart, of their soul. And this healing, this process of healing, is what we call the purification of the heart. As the heart becomes purified, they are then able to see God more. When Christ says in the Beatitudes, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." The sight of God is salvation, because if we see God, it means that we are standing in his presence. Does this make, I don't know, I hope this somewhat makes sense. Therefore, salvation cannot just be a moment, because salvation is not a static point in time. Christ is infinite. And therefore, even if we accept Christ, even if we devote all of our life to him, we are still growing, as St. Paul says, from one degree of glory to another. How can it ever be static? So even if you are saved, don't you want to be, let's say, more saved? Don't you want to come to know Christ more? As St. Silouan says, it is one thing to come to believe in God. It is another thing entirely to know God. And the Orthodox Church, salvation as a whole, is the process in which we come to know and experience the risen Christ. It is the ability to be able to say, not just from the book that we read or the things that we talk about, but to really to be able to confess and say, like Thomas when he puts his finger in the side of Christ and he says, "My Lord and my God." Therefore, salvation is union with God. And of course, people say works and faith and works and, all these things. The only thing I'll respond to with that is this. I mean, and I could go on and on with any scriptural references, of course, but I'll respond with this and ask you this question. The thief on the cross that we know to be saved, okay, if that thief had not confessed the words, "Remember me, O Lord, in your kingdom," would he have been saved? I think this is a valid question to ask. Would he have been saved? My assumption, my thought would be that he would not have been saved had he not uttered those words. And whether that's the conviction of Christ with him or not, regardless, it is him, his words that are being uttered. It is his will that is being used in order for salvation to be received by Christ. Yes, it is a free gift of Christ, but we play a role in the process in whether we accept the gift or whether we reject the gift.